Hey there, scholars. My name is Ira McIntosh, and this is Hypothesis. Hey there, everyone, and welcome back to my office. It is time for another episode of Hypothesis, and oh my gosh, I know I get excited about every episode, but this episode was so much fun to record. I have had a really long week, so it was nice to be able to sit down and just geek out about outer space and about mythology and folklore and what those two things have in common. Myself and my guest got to talk about one of my favorite places, Iceland. We got to talk about the Galactic Bulge. We got, we got to talk about the vastness of space and how we really have no idea what form extraterrestrials might take. So, I really hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And please help me welcome my guest, Dr. Moiya McTier. Dr. Moiya McTier is an astrophysicist, folklorist, and science communicator based in New York City. After graduating from Harvard with the school's first ever joint degree in astro and mythology, she went on to be the first Black woman to earn an astronomy PhD at Columbia. Now, Dr. Moiya shares her knowledge through podcasts like her cozy, space-focused Pale Blue Pod, shows like PBS's Fate and Fabled, and books like The Milky Way Galaxy's Own Autobiography. Dr. Moiya loves fantasy books, her two cats, and shit-talking generative AI. Everyone, please welcome Dr. Moiya McTier. Here we
Thanks,
go.
Zoom
And
lady.
now we get to just sink into a nice conversation about space and all things that make us who we are and where we are. And it'll be great. But
Yeah,
before we even get there, I just want to bring up you have a PBS show.
I did. I did for like 2 or 3 years, and it was fantastic. I loved it. But all things must come to an end.
Yeah, it's still available online though, so people should go watch it because it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's called Fate and Fabled, and I had a co-host. She was a monster expert, Dr. Emily Zarka.
Ooh.
Amazing. And I loved that we got to explore folklore from around the world instead of just sticking with what people know the most, like Greek mythology and some Norse stuff, maybe, and connect it to the modern day. We got to explore like queerness in folklore, trees. Just like how many special trees are there in folklore around the world? It was really fun.
I love trees. But that's a good place to start though, because you seem like you're a chronic overachiever in that you have a double major in mythology and mythology and astrophysics, correct? And then your
Yeah,
doctorate in astrophysics.
yeah. I'm bad at making
Tell me,
decisions. Look, I'm
tell
I'm
me where
bisexual
that came
too. Like
from.
I never want to have to choose. I love why choose romances, you know. Um,
Absolutely.
I I'd say folklore was one of my first loves. I have always been obsessed with fantasy novels and reading about mythologies from around the world. I didn't realize you could study it though or make a career out of it. So when I got to college and I happened to live across the street from the folklore and mythology department, I thought, oh, this is a sign. I must study this. But then there was like a little bit of family drama. My mom always really wanted me to be a scientist. So I followed her dreams in a way and took an astronomy class in my sophomore year. Thought it was interesting enough to keep going, and then strategically chose to get a PhD in it. But the whole time, what I really loved was like this intersection between the two of them.
I honestly didn't realize that folklore was something that you could get higher ed degrees in until very recently because I'm applying for the PhD program at the University of Iceland, and they have a PhD in folklore as
Yes.
well. And I
Oh,
was just like, wait a
don't.
second, what am I doing with my life?
Okay, but Icelandic folklore is some of the most interesting in the world. We could talk
Yeah.
about the necropants. We could talk about the tilbury. We could talk about how a lot of the witchcraft in Iceland was done by men. We could talk about how still more than half of the population believes in elves. They have a
Hmm.
witchcraft museum, like in
Yep.
the north part of Iceland. Yeah, so there are very
They
few
divert their
places where you can do
highways
this.
if they think the elves are have a spot
Yes,
where they plan to put it. Like it's so
it's my
cool. It's
favorite
so
country.
cool.
Yeah.
But mythology and astronomy have a really cool kind of link throughout history. And I mean, you have a series that you do on TikTok exploring that and talking about that. But could you talk about why that might be, where that came from? Like, why do the stars intrigue us so much?
Yeah, it's the oldest science. We have evidence that the indigenous Australians were doing astronomy observations, meaning they were looking at how things across the sky are moving and painting it in their caves 45,000 years ago, at least.
Gosh.
And then there's a difference between just observing the sky and being able to predict what's going to happen next in the sky, and then using that to interpret some divine meaning. As far as we know, the Mesopotamians, especially the Babylonians, were the first to do that part, the assigning divine meaning to it. And so they had this long history of uh, astronomical observations and predictions and omen taking. Um,
Mm,
and so they were really like the first people to start doing astrology. The Greeks took it up, the Egyptians took it up, but the Babylonians had their early astrology that was really just astronomy. Um, and over time, as we got better tools to study the sky, we were able to do science with it, but we still kept that fascination because nothing else is as regular. Nothing else is as all-encompassing. Everyone around the planet, no matter where you live, space is around you and it influences you. It influences your weather. It influences your holidays because the most important holidays we have celebrate the solstices and equinoxes, which are when the sun and the earth are at this special orientation with each other. Um, it's really hard not to see the connections once you start looking for them, but the reason we've been fascinated by the stars is because they're just like they're there and they've always been
mm.
there. Nothing else has been.
And they're so far away and they're untouchable or
That
seem
too.
untouchable.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's no wonder that people thought their gods lived amongst them. Like they're far away, they're looking over you all the time. Hmm.
It it makes me I it's just it's so cool to think about as a sociologist, I think about how humans relate to each other over long periods of time.
Mm.
Um, and that's stars are one of those things where yes, I know we're slowly shifting and I want to get into that too because you talk about that in your dissertation, but we we're still looking at the same stars that we've looked at for thousands of years. And it's this cool connection that we have to humans pre-history, pre what we know of humanity now, that we can be sure of looking up at the sky and saying someone 50,000 years ago was looking at that same heavenly body.
Yes. Yes. I mean, even the constellations we have, if you're a Taurus or a Gemini or a Cancer, those constellations go back 12,000 years. We could trace them back to the ancient Mesopotamians. Isn't that awesome? Like that's a direct line. The
Hmm.
7 day week that we have goes directly back to this astronomy connection, this astronomy obsession that the Babylonians had, because there are seven bright objects in the sky that you can see moving quickly compared to the distant stars. They called them wandering stars, which is actually where the word planet comes from. The Greek word planetin meant wanderer. These seven bodies are the sun and the moon. Only one of those is a star. And then the five planets that you can see with your unaided eye. Um, and for each of those seven bodies, the Babylonians assigned a day of their calendar for their week.
It's so cool. It's so cool. And it puts things in perspective in a really beautiful way, not in like a, oh wow, we're insignificant way, but a, oh wow, look at us as a species being able to continue on a tradition for so long when we seem to hate each other so much in the short term, to
Mm,
look at these really long millennia of being able to agree on something just because we see things out in the sky.
it's beautiful. Yeah.
So it's I I took the liberty of watching your dissertation defense on YouTube, because I'm a nerd and because it was offered to me, and it's like, oh my gosh, yes, of course I could read the dissertation, but let me watch this defense first and see where it takes me.
That's the
And
better choice.
let me tell you the number of questions that I have written down, or like just statements where it's like four question marks after them. And the first thing that really struck me was you were talking about metals, and metals as um the elements, and how the elements are
Mhm.
metals even if we don't think of them as metals in our day-to-day lives. But then
Right.
beyond that, that metals come from stars,
Yes.
that they're formed in stars, and that just blew my mind, that
Yeah,
we
in
need
stars.
stars in order to exist.
Stars and more dramatic things. We need stars that are fusing in their cores to make elements up to iron. And then we need things like neutron stars. These are like the dense cores of massive stars that have gone supernova. We need neutron stars smashing into each other to make things like gold and silver. We need black holes smashing into each other to make heavier elements. And we need like special controlled laboratory environments to make some of these things. And so it really is like a universal effort to make all of the elements of the periodic table over time, over
And then they all happen to
billions
come
of years.
together to create a planet, and we just happen to have so many of these elements all in one place and figured out the uses for most of them.
For most of them. Yeah. Because those supernova explosions from the most massive stars, I like to think of them as the most selfless stars because their supernova explosions will transport the heavier elements that they make in their cores out into what we call the interstellar medium for what would be, light years, tens, hundreds, thousands of light years. And all of the stars that then form in those clouds of gas in that space, they are enriched with those metals, as we call them, because astronomers, we just have a different definition of metal than the chemists. And the chemists have really won the PR competition there with the public of what everyone thinks a metal is. But astronomers have our own definition, and it's everything that is heavier, like has a higher atomic weight than helium. And that's because at the beginning of the universe, after the Big Bang, during what we call Big Bang nucleosynthesis, the only elements to exist were hydrogen and helium. 75% hydrogen, 25% helium, like a tiny little bit of beryllium and lithium. Don't come for me. But it's mostly hydrogen and helium. And so those are the most important elements to astronomers. Everything else is icing. Everything else is the metals.
Hmm. That's so crazy. I mean, it's like vegetables and fruits, how there's no such thing really as a vegetable, but the culinary
Yeah,
people have won that PR battle, and they're like, no, these are vegetables. No, those don't exist.
perfect
But
comparison. Yeah.
it's it's just something that always strikes me now that I've had conversations with a few astrophysicists. The thing that strikes me is how conveniently placed we are in our galaxy to be able to see these things.
Mm.
Because, and I mean, you said it in your defense as well, that we're kind of in the boonies of our galaxy. We're in the deep suburbs of the Milky Way,
Yeah.
and because of that we're able to see so many things. But that then got me thinking, because we see the swirl pattern and we know that it's moving, everything is moving constantly, like it doesn't stop. What keeps it all moving in the same direction? Like why doesn't Soul just spin out into a different direction than the rest of it? What is that
Mhm.
pull?
Mhm. Um, a couple things. Gravity keeps it moving, uh, and keeps it from flying out. Um, its momentum is what keeps it moving in the same direction, because the galaxy would have formed from accreting material, gathering material through the force of gravity, but nothing in space travels on straight lines. Like everything is curved, everything is orbits. And so things fall into the galaxy and then kind of swirl towards the center slowly, like things falling down a drain, like water falling down a drain. And so that's how you get the circular motion. But it's not as simple as that when you like zoom in. The sun isn't just
Mm.
moving like in a flat circle around the galaxy. We have what astronomers call epicycles, which is very different from what the old astronomers like Aristotle and Ptolemy had in their epicycles when they were still trying to defend geocentrism. Um, our epicycles are the consequence of gravity pulling in 3 dimensions. So instead of thinking of the sun's orbit as a simple circle around the galaxy, think of it like you take a slinky and you stretch the slinky out to connect around the galaxy. It's like going around as it revolves around the center of the Milky Way because gravity can pull in different directions. The Milky Way, we say that it's a flat disk, but it has some depth to it. And the stars above it, they tug at the sun gravitationally. And if you get to the into the center of the galaxy, which I studied in one of my PhD projects, the orbits are not circular. They can be figure eights. You can have these beautiful rosettes. Do you remember like the spirographs we played with as kids?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
That like some of the orbits in what we call the bulge of the Milky Way galaxy, they look like those. And
that's crazy.
yeah, it's like this chaotic spherical mess of a place where there are more gravitational interactions and potentially, you interrupt planet formation more often. That's the exciting place. That's the city. And we are out here in the burbs of the disk where we just happen to be the right distance away from the center of the galaxy and moving at the right speed to not pass in and out of any spiral arms and have enough metals around us that we can make humans, but not be close enough to too many other stars that we are in danger of like extreme radiation exposure if one of them goes supernova or something. Like we really are in the perfect place, the most
Mm.
boring, stable place in the galaxy.
I mean, you said that it's all kind of spiraling like water going down a drain. Is there ever, and I mean, obviously we're talking billions of years, is there ever a moment where, or a time when the sun will eventually fall into the bulge?
Hmm. Probably not. I think that the stable, hmm. I think the orbit is so stable that it would only dissipate on timescales larger than what we expect the heat death of the universe to do. Or like actually, no. The, I don't know if the timescales are that long, but the timescales are definitely longer than the eventual impact we will have with the Andromeda galaxy. That's going to happen in like 5 billion years, and it would take way longer than that for our orbit around the Milky Way to decay.
Okay. So then that also brings me to, I have, my brain was going in circles that whole defense because I really wanted to
Perfect.
talk back that whole time.
I
Um,
mean, that's what stars do. So you're already thinking in the right headspace.
well, so you talked about in the bulge where there are so many stars that they aren't capable of having a planet because of
You're
I'm
good. You're
having
good.
trouble
Yeah.
expressing it, but they're not capable of having a planet because they've is it because they've cooled down to a certain point or because there are too many things happening around them?
Yeah.
Um
It's that second
so
one. And
okay.
it's not that they're incapable of having a planet. It's that in the difficult and resource intensive search for habitable planets, we need to focus
Mm,
our efforts where the chance for life is highest. And that's probably not the bulge. They can have planets there, it's just less likely because there's
got
so
it.
much stuff around them that could rip the planet away. The average, the closest star to us is 4.5 light years away from us. It's I don't even know what that is in miles. But the density of stars in the bulge is just so much higher that you can have these stars getting much closer together, and that can rip away planets.
Mm. You also said that it's really uncommon to have single star systems. Why is it so uncommon for there to be single star systems? I mean, especially as pop culture is getting to know the three body problem and
Mm.
we're so used to seeing binary star systems in Star Wars. Like it's kind of in the general ethos of pop culture, but like why is it so unique that we only have one?
Yeah. We think that maybe up to 85% of stars are born in gravitational pairings or triplets. We've seen group of up to 8 stars that are gravitationally bound together. And that happens because these stars form from giant clouds of gas enriched with heavier elements. And there's like a gust of wind or there's a sudden explosion that perturbs the gas cloud and makes it collapse in on itself like a catastrophic failure. But there are thousands of catastrophic failures happening all at once in this cloud. So thousands of collapses into stars that's going to happen, and
Mm.
some of those stars will form close enough together that their gravity latches onto each other, um, just because they're so close. Space is
So
big,
then,
but you know.
yeah, yeah. Um, so then would that mean that our star would have had to have had some kind of gravitational experience that pulled it away from the rest of its family, as it were? Or what could cause a star to go solo?
Stars can form, without another star close enough that it becomes gravitationally bound. That's going to be that 15% of solo stars. Um, but you can also have pairs that break apart through what we call dynamical interactions. As the stars are going about their business orbiting the galaxy, they might get tugged a little bit by another star, or because they aren't in the exact same position, they will be at slightly different distances from the center of the galaxy, which really determines your orbital speed. So one of them will be moving slightly faster than the other, and over time that can
Mm.
separate them. It's actually thought that maybe the sun did once have a companion. The people who think that call that companion Nemesis, and it's pretty common for gravity to just, take things apart, or for your own orbital speeds to take you apart. But the sun is still with its family. We still have what we call the solar neighborhood. We can still identify other stars around us that most likely formed from the same gas cloud. They just didn't form close enough to us to be like really gravitationally linked. But we also see clusters of stars, especially out in the like halo of the Milky Way. We call them, well, there are two types. Globular clusters tend to be the cores of old galaxies that the Milky Way has eaten and absorbed through gravity. And those are uh, maybe around 10,000 stars that are really gravitationally bound, and they're not going to break apart. But you might see them turn from like a clump into a stream, but they're still going to stay together in the family. And then you have open clusters, and they're called open clusters because over time they can break open, they can break apart, and the stars can separate. And this is the type of like stellar family system, I'll say, stellar family tree that I studied in, I think, my second project in grad school.
So then, is it possible that since all of the stars in our area seem to be so scattered, is it possible that we are one of those galaxies that kind of got ripped apart by the Milky Way and scattered open? Or
Mm.
do scientists think that our solar system has always been part of the Milky Way?
Yeah, we've always been part of the Milky Way. The Milky Way is about, I think, the oldest stars in the Milky Way that are kind of closer to its core. Those are about 10 billion years old. Our sun is about 4.5 billion years old. We formed here in the disk. The clusters that tend to break apart, you're going to find them further out in the disk, and then the clusters that are from other galaxies, those are like really far away from the disk. Those are mostly
Mm,
in the like outer halo. So you have the bulge,
okay.
which is in the center, and then you have this wide, flat pancake disk around it. We live like in the middle of the disk, actually, halfway between the center and the edge. And surrounding all of this is a giant cloud of like fuzzy stellar material. Those are things we've absorbed from other galaxies. Those are some stars that have just reached a high enough velocity that they do get kicked out. Like you mentioned
Mm,
earlier, we call those hypervelocity stars. And then even further around that, the galaxy has what we call the dark matter halo, which is a giant cloud of dark matter. It accounts for 90% of the galaxy's mass. So most of what
oh my
actually,
gosh.
I know dark matter is invisible, so we can't see it at all. But like all the stuff we see in the Milky Way, that's
Mhm.
10% of its total mass. Isn't that
That's
wild?
crazy.
And then it's the dark matter halo that can encompass small satellite galaxies like the Large and Small Magellanic Clouds, which will eventually be absorbed into the Milky Way by our gravity
Mm.
after like another few billion years.
And I can't, I mean, I feel like everything, when you talk about space, everything has to be so relative because you're talking about hundreds of thousands of parsecs and you're talking about billions of years.
Yeah.
But, and I can't remember, I'm trying to look through my notes but I can't remember. At one point, you had talked about something that made me wonder if the Milky Way is a really super young galaxy within the universe, and then
Mm.
uh, uh, again, if our solar system was kind of a baby solar system within that baby galaxy. um
Ooh. We're definitely not one of the oldest galaxies. To see that, you really can go based on size. We are the biggest
mm,
galaxy in our little corner of the universe, in what astronomers call the
okay.
local group of galaxies. There are maybe about 50 to 80 gravitationally bound galaxies, and we're the biggest. Andromeda is the other biggest. We're the two main spiral galaxies here, and eventually we will collide. But that's not going to happen for another 5 billion years. We already see galaxies that are as big as what we will be after we collide with Andromeda. Astronomers call that, we've given it a couple name, Milkomeda. That's the galaxy we'll become. But we see other galaxies when we peer far enough away in the universe that are already that big. And because
Mm,
when you peer farther away, you're also peering farther back in time, we're seeing those galaxies as they were like already 10 billion years ago. So they must be huge by
mm,
now. They must be like the
yeah.
super conglomeration of galaxies, which we also see. We see super clusters of galaxies. And if you zoom out far enough in the universe, you see that all of the material is gathered along what we call the cosmic web. It's these filaments of structure, um, because gravity is like capitalism, and the more stuff you have, the more stuff you will continue to get, and the less you have, the emptier you will continue to get.
Mm.
Um, I don't know why I started that rant. You
I
got
mean,
me
just
talking
talking
about
about
capitalism and I get too excited.
that's fair. No, just talking about the age of the galaxy and the solar system. I mean, when you say 5 billion years, that sounds like a long time. But when we think
Mm,
about how old Earth is only what, 4.5 to 5 billion years old. So we're
yeah.
talking another lifetime of the Earth and will be part of another
Hmm.
galaxy, which in the grand scheme of things doesn't sound like it's that long.
No, because realistically, the universe itself is also quite young, given how long we expect it to last. Um, the
Mm,
about 75% of stars in the Milky Way, and probably in the universe, because we don't think the Milky Way is that special. But the vast majority of the stars live so long, we expect them to be fusing hydrogen for over 1 trillion years, which means we've never seen any of the most common type of star move to the next evolutionary phase of its life.
that is wild.
Hmm. And we won't because the universe is only 14 billion years old. We need that's 100 times the current universe's age is how long it will take those low mass stars to stop fusing. So the universe is a baby. So of course our galaxy is
Mm,
a baby.
that's fair. That's fair. And I think I think one of the reasons my mind kind of went there, and I don't want to stay on this topic for very long because it's all conjecture. But you brought up extraterrestrials briefly in your defense. So I figure we can talk about it for a couple of minutes. But
Mhm.
I think that's where my mind was going because I'm sitting here thinking about, okay, so if our planet is only 5 billion years old and we've only just at this point gotten to conscious life, sentient life that can determine its own life course and question its life. If we are looking for extraterrestrial life, why focus on finding life that is humanoid? Because, and this may be assuming way too much about evolution and whether or not bodies are actually useful, but it makes me wonder if then when we're looking at these galaxies that are so much older and are older than we can even see them being, why are we looking for humanoids instead of something that this kind of form could possibly evolve into as intelligence?
Now you're asking the right questions. Exactly. Yes. Yes. And so like that was kind of the conclusion, the grand ending of my dissertation was, hey, everyone, this is so anthropocentric. This is
Mm,
so limited in the scope of what we're considering because life can take any form. Even look at the diversity of life here on Earth and then imagine how much it could change in a drastically different environment on a gaseous
mhm.
planet, on a planet that orbits a star that has a lot more radiation output. Like there's just so many possibilities. I know aliens don't look anything like us.
Yeah, yeah,
But we have to start somewhere, which is the thing.
yeah.
And we have to narrow the search because space is really big. There are
Mm,
over 100 billion planets in our galaxy alone. Because we think that most stars have a couple of planets to them. Actually, the number is the average sun-like star has 2.5 planets, which I love because it just means like the average sun-like star is a white family from the 1950s with a picket fence. Like,
I mean, it just goes to show the universe has patterns that it follows. But
regression to the
I
mean on a mass scale.
it's true though because you look at mass extinction events on Earth, of which there have been what, six or seven,
Yeah,
something
at
like
least,
that,
yeah.
that we know of. And the fact that when it happens, the next kind of takes the apex is rarely the same life form that was apex previously, in terms of like amphibian to fungal to reptilian to
Hmm.
mammal, etc. So again, it makes me confused as to why we are so focused on finding ourselves in the universe. And I guess that's probably a bit an even deeper question that we need to go into.
That's the connection between astronomy and folklore that we need to be talking about. And like,
Yes.
yeah, of course, we want to know where we came from. We want to know if we're alone. And so we are trying desperately to find anything that we can make a connection with. And we're gonna make a connection first with something that looks or acts in a way that we can at least relate to somehow.
Mm.
That's why all of the aliens in science fiction look like us. That and like budget stuff and like practical
Easier to make a
effects.
suit that fits us.
Yeah. Yeah, but also like even in the worlds of animation and animated sci-fi and with all the graphics that we have, we still make them look like us. Like
Mm.
Avatar, they still look like us even though James Cameron has the money to make them look like anything. They could be floating blobs of gas if Cameron wanted it.
They probably should be in that
Yeah,
environment.
yeah. Look at those floating mountains, and you mean to tell me that these people have a solid corporeal form?
And you're telling me that they still have to use other animals to fly? What's
Right.
happening?
What's happening here? So yeah, we love the idea of meeting something like us from somewhere else because then we're everywhere. Then we're special.
Mm.
Or
And
at
it
least maybe
might
not special, but like,
somehow,
the favorites.
yeah, or it might somehow tell us that we came here with a purpose and we didn't just start from nothing. Because I think I was recently listening to a podcast about mathematics and randomness, and
Ooh.
at the end of it they kind of came to the point of like, yeah, everything is random and it's actually more special to be an accident than it is to have purpose, because then you get to make your own purpose. And I was just like, I'm gonna need to sit with this for the next decade, please.
You need to embroider that on a pillow or something. Keep it
but
with you.
but it does the connection there between like modern science fiction and ancient folklore is really fascinating, especially like uh my favorite Indiana Jones movie is the fourth one, and no one liked it. And the reason I liked it was because it showed kind of the dark underbelly of modern science fiction, and in showing that it's just new folklore.
Mm.
um and sure, they were saying that ancient peoples were actually aliens, and that's kind of problematic, but I loved that they were trying to draw that connection between, okay, maybe the reasons we have these stories about extraterrestrial life coming and visiting us is the same reason that these people in the past had these stories of gods coming to visit them.
I like that. Yeah. And that's the same reason I like Stargate so much, or like one of the
Mm,
reasons.
I
Um,
need to watch Stargate. I haven't watched it yet.
it's my favorite sci-fi franchise. I
Okay.
I usually get annoyed in sci-fi when they're in space because they just get it
Mm,
really wrong. But they spend so little time in space in Stargate and
yeah.
instead just get to spend all the time exploring different worlds, which is what the world builder in me really wants to do.
Mm. Are you a D&D, or it feels like you would be?
Yes. I'm in two campaigns right now. Are you kidding me?
Oh, I'm so jealous. I've wanted to for so long, and all of my friends keep telling me, "Oh yeah, we started a new campaign last week," and I'm like, "Yep, here."
Without that, you need new
Oof.
friends. Like, what are they
I
doing?
know. I know. I even tried to bribe my dad into starting one because he was a dungeon master back in the 70s, like when
Hmm.
it all began, and
Hmm.
got him like the new improved book and sets of die for everyone in the family, and he still hasn't done it. I'm like, can someone just like, it'll happen
Please.
someday. It'll happen when it's meant to happen.
Hmm.
Uh but it's, yeah, back to the original point. Yeah, it's I get so excited that humans this is going to sound stupid, but I love that humans are not creative in any way, shape, or form. And we keep coming back to the same thing over and over again. Like, we're very creative in that we can reimagine things over and over again. But the fact that we keep coming up with the same folklore, just with different names for things,
Hmm.
again, it's so beautiful to see these connections with an ancient past, and
Yeah.
especially as a species that's millions of years old and that we maybe really only understand a few thousand years of it. It helps me feel less unimportant to know that humans have always been like this,
Yes.
even when we were Homo florentia,
Hmm.
I'm saying that completely wrong. When we were Neanderthals, when we were like all of these different species,
Yeah.
there was still, I'm sure there was still some of that same energy put into looking up at the night sky and coming up with stories about it for each other around a fire. Like, it's
Mhm.
just so ingrained in us.
You're right. Humans have been humaning. The homos have been homos for millions of years, and we have the same experiences. We fall in love. We experience grief. We experience hunger. We yearn for things, and that's what folklore is all about. The root of folklore is not just people making stuff up to have fun. That happens, but the root of it is to provide explanations for these fundamental experiences that as humans we all have. And that's why you see gods of love and agriculture and rain and the sky everywhere. It's because those things exist everywhere, and we need comfort and guidance in all of those realms. Um, yeah.
I love when people who are researchers suddenly are talking and then they just dissociate because they get their minds overload with all of the things they're thinking about. It's very relatable.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of my favorite connections to think about. It's just like why this exists everywhere. Like what is the point of folklore? And it's really to explain, which is the point of science also. And that's why I can do both of these things that people think I shouldn't be able to do.
But you have to be able to do them because the if you I've been having this conversation with so many people lately in that there's such a push for STEM without humanities,
Mm-hmm.
or humanities without STEM. And it's like,
Mm.
we need both. You have to have both. It's like when a public high school gets rid of sports for music, which rarely happens, or gets rid of music for sports, you need both because they teach the same thing in very different ways, and humans have different ways of seeing things. So we need to be able to tap into all of those different ways of knowing in
Mm-hmm.
order to move forward. Like when I was getting a master's in opera, my pedagogy class, we went and sat down with the ENT students and figured out how the muscles were moving and why the sine waves were doing what they were doing, and had scopes done while people were singing so that we could see the exact movements and slowed it down and watched it frame by frame. And so being able to combine the hard science with the artistry allowed us to ask questions we hadn't thought of before, similar with our conversation today, being able to talk about the overarching themes of humanity simply by saying, okay, here's astronomy and here's mythology, what does that say about humans as a
Mm-hmm.
species? And you can't ask the same kind of questions if you don't allow yourself to see both sides at the same time.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't have said it better. I love that. I love the that training for opera studies. Like
Mm-hmm.
that makes so much sense. And it's a way that
Mm-hmm.
we can continue to advance the craft. I think like people see this tension, this opposition when that's like a beautiful example of how you can improve them both by combining. Like that opera is an old art form, singing is an old art form. There's only so many things we can do to improve it without stuff like
Mhm.
this, without getting like the inside look at the throats that they couldn't see thousands of years ago.
Well, and at the same time, not using that to override what they say or call them stupid, but to say, oh, you know how we talk about this thing in voice lessons. The reason we're talking about that and use uh that imagery is because it makes your epiglottis do this, or like it finding those connections between the kind of ephemeral part of taking voice lessons, where it's like, oh, if you think about blowing leaves forward in front of you, yeah,
Mm.
you can talk about that, but what is that doing physically? Because it changes your physicality,
Mm-hmm.
because our brains are easily tricked into doing things, and if you know how to trick it in a specific way, it's going to make the mechanism work differently.
Yeah. And
um
then those ENT researchers understood their craft better because they got to
yeah.
see it in action in an extreme way. Like I'm sure they get to see regular people's throats all the time and how it looks when they talk.
Mhm.
But like people who are classically trained in making their voices do things that regular people's voices can't do, that is a treat
Oh
as
yeah,
a researcher.
the things ENTs ask opera singers when they scope them, because you can look up videos on YouTube of like opera singers being scoped, and the ENTs are like, "Wait, can you do this and this and this and this?" And the singers does it. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, I've been wanting to see that for years."
Yes,
But
the
it's
beautiful
so,
collaboration.
yeah, it's just so beautiful. And similarly with talking about folklore and astronomy, they were describing things, I'm sure, through folklore that we are now able to see the science behind and say, oh, that's why they thought this.
Yes. Yes, old Finnish myths. Finland being in a part of the world that has like extreme seasons over the course of a year where you can have like the long days and the long nights. They have a story to explain their seasons where their goddess of the sun and the goddess of the moon, they are stolen by the winter witch and hidden in a cave. And that's why you have these long periods of darkness. And it's the sky god who has to go and rescue them from the cave to bring them back and bring back the daylight. They've been explaining this stuff because like the folklore was
Mhm.
based on observation the whole time.
I mean, same thing with the story of Hades and Persephone, and
Yes.
what brought about the seasons for the Greeks was, oh, when Persephone gets stolen and taken down into Hades for 6 months out of the year, all of the plants die, everything gets cold, and then her mother, Demeter, goes down and rescues her and brings her back for 6 months, and all of a sudden she's the world is alive again, and birds are chirping and the sun is shining and things like that. So it shows how deeply in touch they were, even though they didn't know exactly what was going on and they couldn't explain precise movements that we now can go in and kind of fill in those gaps. They were still, I I think that's why it frustrates me so much when people think of ancient people as being stupid or being
Hmm.
less advanced, because it's just because they didn't say things in the way that we say them and they didn't understand them in the way that we understand them doesn't mean that they didn't understand the same things.
Yes. Yes. Um, there's There's so many ways that we underestimate ancient abilities, and it screws us over every time we do
Mhm.
it. Like we assumed for a long time that there were certain geometry problems that weren't done until the Romans, until we discovered a small piece of cuneiform on a tablet from ancient Babylonians that proved they were doing this type of geometry to predict the motion of Jupiter and Saturn 10,000 years ago. Like
It's
we
just,
know over and
it's
over again.
wild.
Yeah,
Well, and I mean, of course, it all comes back to racism, but
every time.
Oh. Um, I mean that's a rough pivot, but I do want to I do want to pivot because I think you brought this up in your bio and it was brought up in your defense, and I think it's really important to bring up that you are the first Black woman to receive a doctorate in astrophysics from Columbia, and that's really exciting. On the one hand, it's really exciting, and on the one hand, it's really sad that it took this long.
Yeah. I shouldn't be the first anything. I was happy to be the first Astro Folk and Myth double major. That's the type of thing that you can be the first. But like to be a
Exactly.
first for something that I didn't decide is just sad. Like Columbia needed to do
Mm,
better. And so that it's my job to make sure that I'm not the last. Like that's how that goes.
well, that's what I was going to ask because I know Columbia has a reputation.
Mm.
What I don't want you to I'm this isn't me trying to corner you into saying Columbia is a terrible institution. How dare they? Blah blah blah. But are there
I mean, they are,
ways
and how dare they?
that that's
I
fair?
haven't visited Columbia since. I think I did one event with the Astro department. But other than that, no. Like you also have to get like super security passes or whatever to get on campus. So they suck.
Yeah, they should be having you on campus literally every single day. And I'm not saying that facetiously, but I what are the ways, and I mean layering on top of that, because I it's an important layer is also you being a queer person, to have all of those things as attributes to yourself. What are ways that we can that we can encourage more people like you to be going for those degrees and to put up with the bullshit of these universities? Because I have a lot of people constantly coming up to me being like, well, why should I listen to you because you're working within this ivory tower, you're working within an institution that traditionally excludes me.
Hmm.
And so it's I'm always trying to figure out better ways of explaining, because there's only so many times you can say, well, work within the system, because that's not satisfactory.
No, it's not, and you don't want people to have to do that.
Yeah.
Um, I have always been very honest with people about what Columbia was like for me. And I think that's just what we have to do, be honest and let people make their own decisions. I hated grad school, not because it was Columbia, but because of grad school. I don't think I would have been happier anywhere else. Because all of the um squashing of protests and all of the taking
Mm,
away of people's degrees happened after I left. So while I was there, it was just, normal gross grad school stuff. But I tell people that, and I tell people
mm,
who in the department I had problems
mm.
with. And so the only thing we can do is be honest and tell them that, like, while you're in these institutions, it is not your responsibility to try and change them, but that's the only place you can do it from if you want to.
And I mean,
Um,
if you want to have conversations with some of those people, you unfortunately have to match them in terms that they would agree, say that you are on their level. And for a
right.
lot of them, you can't talk to a PhD professor, a tenured professor, and say you know what you're talking about unless you also have that same track behind you, that same pedigree.
Hmm.
Um, so at a
Yeah.
certain point, you unfortunately have to play the game just to get them to listen to you.
If you want them to listen to you, yeah. And
That's
there
fair.
are totally valid paths that you can take where they don't need to listen to you. The people in the ivory tower love to believe that they are more important than they are, but you can be a public intellectual without playing their games.
Mm,
Um, Maybe you play the game for a while. That's what I did. I knew the whole time that if I could just get the doctorate, then I would have the respect and the capital I needed to be a communicator outside of academia. But not everyone wants to take that path. So like it truly is up to
Yeah.
you. And I've always said that I don't care if more people get PhDs in astrophysics. Honestly, we probably have too many people with PhDs in astrophysics. I would like the proportions to change, for sure.
Mm,
There are too many like white dudes with parents who are astrophysicists becoming astrophysicists, but
mm.
we don't need more people doing scientific research. We need more people who can think scientifically and quantitatively and who understand, have the ability to understand the scientific research that's being done and how it
I think
affects their lives.
that's one thing. If I could have kind of an underlying moral to this podcast for however long I do it, it would be that interdisciplinary studies are more important than anything else.
Yeah,
And I think you're such a good example of that, in that we need people who come from different places in order to both academically and physically and mm, in terms of their identities, and we need all of those backgrounds coming to every single one of these places. Like for me, being able to come to, I have a master's in communications and I want a PhD in sociology, but coming at it from being in the world of music for so long and being in the world of drag for so long and doing all of these other things informs how I look at problems. Um, and
absolutely. Especially as a sociologist.
yeah, well, and to have the demographic of all of these, especially the hard sciences, to have the demographic be a bunch of rich white men is only going to give us one viewpoint. And it's why medicine is so skewed, because it's a bunch of white men experimenting on mice that are also male and experimenting on men and saying, okay, this is what
Mm.
women need to have for their medical needs.
Well, the
And
female body is just so complicated, you know.
but at the same
Who can
time
understand
somehow
that?
can but at the same time somehow the medicine works when you only study the male body. But
Yeah.
it's we need all of these viewpoints in order to push all of these things forward. And that's one reason, like when I first asked you to be on the podcast, I had only seen your I'm forgetting what the series is called now. um
Cosmetology.
Thank you, your cosmetology series. And the fact that you had your PhD, and I was like, great, let's get her on the pod. And then I started looking at your bio and all of these things, and I was like, oh my god, why did she say yes to be on my podcast? But just I think the thing behind it was just seeing that passion for story and for understanding that the science had more purpose to it than just let's look at a star and figure out its mass and the things it's made out of. Let's also see how that relates to us and where we came from and why we are where we are. Is just so that ethos just radiates off of you. Pardon the
Thank
pun.
you. Pun very much appreciated. Thank you. Yeah, that's the goal. I mean, interdisciplinary thinking is, I think, the greatest mental exercise that people can do. That is why I love world building so much, like fictional world building, because it to do it in the way that I do it, like you really have to think. You were bringing the humanities and the sciences and the social sciences together to do it well.
Well, I could talk about this all the time, but unfortunately, we need to pivot into my synthesis questions. So this is a series of 7 questions that I ask all of my guests, and I always say let's do them rapid fire, and then they never end up being rapid fire, but we'll see what happens.
Okay.
So the first question is, what is your typical executive dysfunction and or rest day activity?
I cannot mail things. That's my executive dysfunction activity. Is that what you mean? Like what
Like,
gives
what do
me
you do when you're
functional
stuck in
freeze?
that space? Yes.
Oh, not what gives me the space. What do I do to get out of it?
Yes.
I am an Aries moon, so I need to do something like intensely physical, like go to the gym or do a little dance party in my room.
I like that. What is your favorite setting for working on your research?
Mm, my couch with my cats on either side of me.
What is one thing an advisor has told you that has stuck with you? And this can be good or bad, or both.
Um, I will say I had my college thesis advisor told me that wasn't going to make it in academia if I couldn't do two things at once. And that to me is just so hilarious, given like my whole thing. So
Yeah.
that's really stuck with me. Just I like thinking about that and being like, haha, you, proved you wrong.
We all got to have a chip on our shoulders at some point.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, I'm fueled
if
by
you could,
spite.
perfect. If you could choose any other area of research, what would you choose and why?
I used to dream of being the world's foremost Arthurian legend expert. So that.
Ooh, ooh, that's exciting.
Hmm.
I feel like we don't play around with Arthurian legends as much as we should.
I feel like there was a hot moment like between the 80s and the aughts, and now it's like not the
Hmm.
thing anymore.
Yeah,
I can bring it
sad.
back.
Who is one other academic whose research you really admire?
Dr. Chanda Prescott Weinstein. They are a theoretical particle cosmologist who also does a lot of work around gender identity and like queerness and blackness in space and like weird intersections there. Very interesting stuff. I super admire
Ooh,
their work.
I'll be looking them up because that sounds really exciting. What is a question you've never been able to answer?
What is beyond the universe? There is no satisfying answer to it. There doesn't exist an answer in science for that. It's all philosophy. So, like, I don't know.
Yeah, I try to steer away from that question because then I feel bad.
Yeah.
And then the last question, what font do you wish you could present your research in?
I wish it could be that chiller font, like the one that looks like Halloween, like blood dripping. I'm a spooky person. I love Halloween season, but it's hard to read and it's not accessible, so I wouldn't do it. But like for the vibes, you know?
That would be so much fun. Just an entire scientific paper.
Yeah.
And where can people find you online?
You can find me at moyamctier.com, or if you don't want to spell out my whole name, I'm Go Astro Mo on all of the social platforms.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me today and taking some time to talk about things. It's been amazing, and I really hope we get the chance to talk again.
Yeah, that'd be great. This was such a treat, such a delight. Thank you.
All right, and we'll talk to you all later. Bye. Oh my gosh, that episode was so much fun to record, and I really hope you enjoyed listening to it. And I hope you learned something because I was kind of in awe the entire time about the information that we were talking about, and that I maybe kind of understood some of it. But if you are interested in hearing more, you can watch Dr. McTier's dissertation defense on YouTube. Just type in her name, Dr. Moiya McTier. Also, as always, you can find the articles and such discussed in today's episode on the Substack. That's iramackintosh.substack.com. You can also, if you ever have questions for our guests or for me that have to do with academia or life in general, or you need some advice, we'll answer anything. Feel free to submit questions on Instagram at hypothesispod, via our email at podcasthypothesis@gmail.com, or on SpeakPipe. If you would like to send in an audio message and have your voice on the podcast, you can send that in at speakpipe.com/hypothesis-podcast. That's speakpipe.com/hypothesis-podcast. Please follow all of our socials. You can find me on Instagram at Ira A. McIntosh or on TikTok at The Gay Ethnographer. So please follow, like, do all of the things on those, because the more you interact, the more people we can bring into the Hypothesis family. It's the only way that we can get people to listen is from listeners like you. So thank you. Did you pick up on that PBS reference? Please, please, please subscribe, rate, review, and share with your friends. And when you do subscribe, click the button that says to download each episode as they are released, because if you don't download them, it doesn't count on the back end for our numbers. So please make sure that you're downloading the episodes when you're listening to them. But of course, subscribing, rating, and reviewing do just as much good. So please do all of that, and please share this podcast with your friends. We're available on all of the things. You can watch us on YouTube. You can listen to us everywhere you listen to podcasts, or you can find the articles and follow along with things on the Substack at I don't even remember it. iramcintosh.substack.com. There you go. Let's fight misinformation together. Everyone have a wonderful day, and please go read a book. Goodbye.